Yes. Yes, it was. There's the short answer. And with no spoilers. Go watch the movie if you haven't, please. I want the DCU to succeed so badly, and it all starts with this movie doing the box office numbers it needs to. Now, the rest of this video is going to be the full-on review, and with plenty spoilers to be casually dropped, so if you care about that, stop watching this video and go watch the movie. When it comes to Superman, I've been vocal in the past about how I never really cared about the character. I was one of the people who thought he was boring, but I didn't really have a reason why I thought that. I hadn't seen any Superman-related media, my only relation with the character was my upstairs neighbor being a huge fan and having an entire table of just Superman figures. I don't like that neighbor anymore. I haven't for a while, but I do hope that he liked this movie. But in the last year or two, I started actually listening to Superman fans talk about why they love the character so much that it made me understand the fandom and more of the character. But it wasn't until NerdSync made a video about the show My Adventures with Superman that actually made me become a fan. Scott praised the show for having such a wholesome Superman, and that made me interested in checking it out, and I don't regret it one bit. I fell in love with this kind-hearted, wholesome bundle of joy and wanted more. I got that more with the show's second season, but also with Superman and Lois. I watched a few scenes on YouTube, and I knew that I had to watch this show. The adaptation of Superman into the stay-at-home dad, married to Lois Lane and having 2 children, was so intriguing and fed itself ways to be so wholesome, and that's exactly what the show was. I binged this entire show, cried several times, met Tyler Hoechlin and geeked out to him about all my favorite scenes of Clark being a dad, hugged him, and then later binged season 4 when it finally got released on the Max. I also recently bought the entire series box set because yes. I also neglected to mention that the DCAU played a part in me liking Superman, but that universe is the reason why I'm the DC head I am today. It showed me why I always preferred DC over Marvel when growing up, even though the only heroes I cared about on either side was Batman and Spider-Man. But the Superman animated series and both Justice League and Justice League Unlimited were a great showing of the Superman that the character is meant to be. I say all of this as the background of my relationship with the character. These 3 versions showed me who Superman truly is and what he's about. His standing of hope and all things good, while also just being so damn wholesome all the time. So going into this movie, that's the thing I wanted the most. Wholesome. It can do whatever it wants to do, but I just want Superman and the gang to be wholesome. And the moment it was announced that James Gunn would be making this, I had all the hope in the world. James Gunn knows comics. He is a massive comic book fan, and anybody who pays even the slightest attention to him knows this. So him writing and directing a Superman movie made so much sense, and I knew the character was going to be in good hands. And he definitely was. Superman 2025 is no origin story. Hell, it's not really an introduction to a cinematic universe. The movie serves more as just a Superman tale and throws us into an already pre-established world, and quite honestly, I love it a lot for that. We don't need to see the origin stories of characters we're well familiar with. The most this movie does with that is at the very beginning, when it tells us that 3 decades ago, Krypton blew up and left a baby stranded in Kansas, and 3 years ago, Clark announced himself as Superman to Metropolis, while also supplying the information that 3 weeks ago, Superman stopped a war between the countries Baravia and Jarnbor, and that 3 hours prior to where we begin the movie, the Hammer of Baravia had just entered Metropolis, and Superman just lost his first battle 3 minutes ago. Well, not his first battle, but first loss. I don't know how to word that. But that's it. No spending 30 minutes watching the origin of Krypton and then another 30 minutes seeing the origin of Clark Kent. This is just pop culture at this point, and James knows this, so instead we get to just start right in the middle of some action. And the rest of the story plays out like a random Superman comic you just happen to pull out, including appearances of random characters you may or may not know, but hey, they're here. Get used to it. I tried avoiding any reviews of this movie. The closest that I ever got was watching a bit of 3C's out of theater reaction and getting an article that critiqued the film for feeling like it wasn't setting up anything for a DC universe. And I can kind of agree to that, but in the sense of it being one of my favorite aspects of the film. I like how this movie doesn't try to set up a universe, instead just throws us into it. This is a world where metahumans, superheroes, and supervillains, and just all that comic booky shit just exists, and the people live with it. In the background of an important scene between Lois and Clark is a giant alien eye being attacked by the Justice Gang, and is done so casually that I love it. Oh, an interdimensional space imp and a kaiju invade Metropolis and are stopped by an alien from a different planet, a man with a ring, a girl in a hawk costume, and a dude with a T on his face? Yeah, sure, that's normal. Why? Because comics. While I love certain adaptations for being a realistic and grounded take on the character, and I look ever so forwardly to the Batman Part 2, I also really wanted the DC movies to embrace the fantastical elements that are the comic books, especially after binging the entire DCAU. And the introduction of the DCU showing the audience that this universe is going to have the fantastical elements and none of this is capable of being grounded in reality makes me so happy and so excited for the future. I can't wait for the Supergirl movie and seeing Lobo on the big screen, or seeing Clayface on the big screen with an R-rated horror vibe. I can't even begin to imagine what they're gonna do with Batman. James Gunn has the opportunity to do the funniest shit ever. Now, in terms of the movie's actual story, I think it's pretty good. A standard Lex versus Superman tale where Lex uses some complicated plan that involves starting a war and reckless science with pocket dimensions just as an excuse for the government to give him the go-ahead to kill Superman, while Clark has to deal with the internal and external struggle of finding out the truth behind his Kryptonian parents and why they sent him to Earth, while also dealing with Lex at the same time. On paper, the story can come off sounding a bit messy, but I think the final product nails everything it needed to without anything feeling too rushed or bogged down. The closest thing to pacing issues that I felt was the pocket dimension escape sequence, feeling a lot longer on my first watch than on my second and third, but that's about it. And in general, I just love this more wholesome, hopeful take on Superman and seeing it on the big screen. How heavy the movie drills in that Superman may be an alien from Krypton, but in reality, he's as human as the rest of us because of how he was raised and the way he goes on about his life every single day. It's just fucking perfect. It's just a fantastic showing of who Superman is and how he's not just a boring character because he's a super powerful demigod that has no defects. I'm glad that shows like My Adventures, Superman and Lois, S-TAS, and Justice League existed to show me who the character is, but I'm also really happy that there's now a full-length, theatrically released movie that can explain that and introduce a younger audience to the beauty of Superman. One could say the original movie could do this as well, but speaking from personal experience, you might bore a younger generation member just from the 5 minutes of opening credits and then half an hour of Marlon Brando saying Krypton. I'm gonna be so real, I never even made it far enough in that movie to see Christopher Reeve. I got so bored, and I was already a Superman fan by the time I tried watching this. Also, the whole kindness is punk rock message that the movie kind of has was pretty neat to me, until I was talking to my dad and he would just casually mention that punk rock was always about kindness, and that made me start laughing in the middle of our conversation because I was like, oh, I could annoy you even more and bring this back to Superman again. But like, I think that's just kind of cool that like James Gunn is reinforcing that like punk rock has always been about kindness. Let me use Superman to tell you that. I also like Lois and Clark's relationship in this. It seems like they started seeing each other around the same time Clark announced himself as Superman, but we skip all past that, and instead of playing the game of, is Lois in love with Superman or Clark, or she's in love with Superman and not Clark, or will they, won't they adventure, or even the whole Lois not knowing the identity of Superman is just gone. They're already seeing each other by the events of this movie, and I am so down. They don't say how Lois found out, but judging by the conversation she has with Guy Gardner, Clark probably just trusted her enough to tell her, which reminds me of a similar thing happening in Superman and Lois. Are the two still working out some problems? Yeah, and they don't officially become a thing and say I love you to each other until the end of the movie, but one of my favorite aspects of Superman is the relationship between him and Lois. One of my favorite scenes in Superman and Lois is when Clark knows that something's bothering Lois because he can tell by the way her
jaw clenches.
This dude has countless of superpowers, and yet he understands his wife's emotions based on her own human quirks. And they have this great conversation where Lois is upset because Clark wasn't there for something important to her, but she feels bad for being upset by it because she knows Clark wasn't there because he was busy having to be Superman. So while she's valid for being hurt by this, she also feels selfish for her feelings, and it's so goddamn human, and this whole interaction is great and mature and adorable, and I love it so goddamn much. So to get scenes in this movie where Lois isn't good at relationships and the two having a little argument, later reconciling and being mature adults about everything, and seeing the humanity between these two characters is so fucking great, and I love it. And now that they're officially a couple by the end of the movie, I can't wait to see where this relationship goes in future installments. The scenes in the kaiju battle where Superman saves a dog, he saves a woman and tells her to take slow breaths and like guides her into like calming down from this. He saves a kid, and he even saves a squirrel, are just all so perfect, and I love them. Not only is it just Superman as fuck to do all this, but it specifically reminds me of my adventures with Superman, and him cleaning up the city after a battle, and how that was some praise that NerdSync gave to the show, and one of the various reasons why I ended up checking it out. Hell, even in that kaiju battle itself, he spends the entire time not wanting to kill it, actively trying to find ways to pacify it and get it away from the city safely, and becoming more and more irritated as the Justice Gang gives zero shits and does painful attacks to the kaiju and even kills it. I also really like the action scenes here. Do some of them come across very CGI heavy? Of course, but I think it kind of works in a way. Watching the way Superman flies about during the kaiju battle or the wave of raptors just feels very Superman, and to me, almost like comic book panels come to life or some kind of action I'd find in an animated show. The most jarring that the CGI combat looks for me is during the fight between Ultraman and Engineer, when Clark's laying on his back hovering above the ground, attached to the Engineer but still manages to pick her up and beat Ultraman with her, which is kind of funny. It's the most CGI looking moment in the movie for me, but I still kind of like it. Again, it just feels and looks comic booky or animated show or movie to me, and I get that this is live action, but it's also Superman. I can have a level of disbelief and whimsy to allow myself to enjoy the action and the movements rather than obsess on potential poor CGI. And as I've already said before, this movie gives zero shits about trying to be grounded in reality, so if the weight of characters or the movements feel off in terms of realism, it doesn't really bother me in the slightest. The film is unabashedly being a comic book on the big screen, and I love it so much for that. Hell, that's one of the reasons why Spider-Man 2002 is my favorite of the Sam Raimi movies and one of my favorite movies of all time. There's also two exceptionally great Superman pose shots. The one where he's just standing in the air around a bunch of smoke and his suit is the only pop of color in the entire frame, and the context of that shot being through the perspective of a pedestrian who just got saved by him makes it even better. Probably my favorite of the two. And the other being when he gets the leg up on Ultraman and the way the camera moves in position to his pose. I thought that was a great Superman shot, as well as good wallpaper material. Also, every time that I think that there's something in this movie that was made up by James, I'm proven wrong. The Superman robots? All-Star Superman. Ultraman's identity? Justice League of America. Even an explanation of the glasses by Guy Gardner that I thought was just a joke or him being dumb is an actual canon explanation from the comics. Hell, I'm sure the Kryptonians can't get drunk on a planet with a yellow sun, so they have to be on one with a red sun explanation is probably found in some comic book. Oh, yep, there it is. Hey, that's also the comic that's inspiring the new Supergirl movie. Genuinely, my only problems with this movie is I think a few of the close-up camera angles and lenses give an unflattering look to Superman and Hawkgirl in a few shots, and during the action scene between Engineer and the Superman robots when Angela just does a handstand and then nanobites herself into facing the other direction. All 3 times I watched that scene, I just thought it was such a stupid and pointless move to do in battle. It'd probably just be quicker to turn around. But that's pretty much it when it comes to things I actually disliked from the movie. Other than that, I have like 2 meaningless nitpicks. The first one being that in my first 2 watches, there's a scene that David Corenswet sounds like he calls Crypto Krypton, but I really tried to focus on the dialogue in that moment on my 3rd watch, and it sounds like he was trying to say crypto and it just kind of got muddled into one word. And the second one being that there was one thought I had during either my 2nd or 3rd watch. What do the people at the Daily Planet think when Superman publicly goes to jail and then Clark just suddenly stops showing up for work the entire time Superman's gone? But again, they're meaningless nitpicks that do absolutely nothing to my enjoyment of the movie. The first is just a weird line delivery that may have gotten messed up, and the other is just being a funny thought. Oh, and I guess I should mention that I don't think the movie's worth watching in 3D. There's only like 2 scenes where the 3D effect is actually noticeable and works. The first being literally right at the beginning of the film, and the second being the tooth-breaking punch, which is a pretty obvious 3D shot. I don't regret paying the $3 to see it though, and I also ended up with a free poster, so that's cool. Now on to my thoughts of the core characters, starting with Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, because he was probably the thing I was the most curious about with this movie. I liked him in the menu, but that role's not a good gauge at a Luthor performance, but I still thought he would probably do good. He does way better than Jesse Eisenberg, but no duh, he's actually playing the character and not whatever this is. My personal favorite Lex is, of course, Clancy Brown of the DCAU, but I also really like Michael Cutlitz and Superman and Lois. I know that Michael Rosenbaum is considered by most to be the best live-action Lex Luthor, but I haven't watched Smallville yet. Though, what made this role so particularly interesting to me was Michael Rosenbaum himself asking James Gunn if this version of Lex Luthor will have gravitas.
If there were a Lex Luthor, promise me this. He'll have gravitas, or he'll be Lex Luthor. He won't be playing Lex Luthor, but he's more acting like this character, or this, or goofy, or crazy.
Oh, and he did. This movie's Lex Luthor is really great. He's so confident with everything he does, carrying an almost menacing aura around him, while also being such a dickhead. He is full of shit smarminess when he's on the news telling Metropolis that he's scared, or the way he abuses his staff and the people around him. I love when he's going on his tantrum to Superman about how brains beats bronze, and being so intellectually far up his own ass that it blinds him in certain aspects, or he straight up just doesn't care about the safety of the city, willing to literally split Metropolis in half just to kill Superman, pretending that he's doing all of this for the safety of the people, but in reality he's just jealous of all the attention, praise, and love that Superman has gotten over him. With the help of both James Gunn's writing and Nicholas Hoult's acting, there's a few scenes in here that actually kind of humanizes Lex, and you get a tiny look behind the smart guy facade and actually see the humility in him, and it's amazing. There's also just something about the vibe of this Luthor and the way he talks so highly of his intelligence that reminded me of the DCAU.
Only a 12th level intellect has the slightest hope of surviving what you are about to experience.
Then I'm overqualified.
And not only does anything reminding me of the DCAU automatically make it something I like, but it also makes me so happy to see the movie start taking inspiration, or at least getting the vibes from the best adaptation of the source material. I didn't really have much thoughts on David Corenswet being Superman when it was announced, on account of me having no idea who he is, let alone his acting abilities. Did I think he was going to top Tyler Hoechlin for me? God, no. Once you hug a Superman, he's Superman for life. I wasn't all that impressed at first when we got the teaser for this movie, but the more that time passed and I thought about it, the look of him started to grow on me. I liked the stark difference between Clark and Superman. Still iffy on the Clark hairstyle, mostly because I just don't like that haircut in general, but the cut he has on Superman is pretty good, and I like the little curl sticking out, which apparently is just how David Corenswet's hair naturally looks. Like, that's just how his hair naturally acts.
So we cut my hair for Superman. That was sort of the main cut that we wanted to make sure it looked the way we wanted it to look. But the Clark Kent hair is just what my hair does at that length if you just let it dry. So if I slick my hair back as it sort of is with Superman traditionally, and you don't really cement it down, then inevitably one or two little curls will flop down. So that is
born to be Superman.
But it wasn't until I saw a side-by-side of him and Henry Cavill in BBS that it really clicked that David Corenswet looks fucking perfect as Superman. Hell, I'll even say he looks better than Tyler. And after watching this movie 3 times, I really like his Superman. I think I'll always be biased towards Tyler Hoechlin, but David just oozes this lovely, charismatic charm while adding a bit of nuance to the character. I love how Clark isn't just this happy-go-lucky guy with not a single flaw in his attitude, this giant beam of positivity, and nothing can get him down, but instead of human. He's not depicted as some emotionalist god with no care for humanity, or thrown on the complete other side of the spectrum as nothing in the world is ever wrong and nothing bothers me. Clark tries to be as positive as he can be, thinking he was sent to this world for nothing but good and to bring hope to people, but there's also so many scenes where things just obviously are riling him up and he has to control his anger. Several scenes where something is bothering him, and instead of allowing his anger to get the better of him, he just has to stand there in silence and breathe. It's a great showing that even though he thinks he's meant to be standing of all things positive, and in general he is a very positive guy, negativity still affects him, but he knows how to control it, not let it become him or make the situation worse. Crypto is such a little shit, a horribly trained dog, and it's so cute. I love him so much in this movie, his placement and his role in the film, and the fact that Clark only has him because he's dog-sitting for his cousin. I also cannot believe that Crypto is CGI, apparently. I didn't notice it on my first 2 watches, and then I found out he was CGI, and I still don't see it. There has to be, like, a real dog that's playing in some of these scenes. Like, obviously, I get when he's flying or maybe jumping backwards, but there's close-ups where it really felt like there was an actual dog on set. If those shots are CGI too, then that's insane, because the hair specifically looks really fucking good. I also just love the use of Chekhov's chew toy when it comes to Crypto. I think Rachel Brosnahan is the perfect live-action actress of Lois Lane I've seen so far in both looks and acting, and even in comparison to the DCAU and Tomboy Lois. She nails the hardcore reporter aspect of the character, with the perfect showcase of that being the interview between her and Superman. The way she grills into Clark for his writing and being on and off the record, but it's specifically the moment where Clark tries to tell her that she's being dishonest because she's saying Boravia is peaceful even though she knows they're not, and her response is something along the line of, "I'm pretty sure that's the case, but do I know that for certain? No." And it absolutely stunts Clark, and he just gives this look of, ah, shit, you got me there. I also like her little tick of chewing on pens. I just think that's neat. That and her calling herself punk rock and calling Jimmy a choir boy at one point, top tier. And while I don't have much examples for Jimmy Olsen's character outside of my adventures in the animated series, and I guess him getting shot
Africa
for no reason, I didn't even know that was Jimmy Olsen to begin with, I really like the portrayal in here. The writing's solid, and Skylar Gazanda gives a great performance. I hope Jimmy eventually gets the Superman collar. And this movie has probably my favorite depiction I've seen of Ma and Pa Ken. And my favorite before this was the animated series where you had Ma and Pa pulling out shotguns on goddamn Brainiac. But this version of Ma and Pa are just so goddamn wholesome and perfect. The way they talk, their accents, the way Pa says burrito, the way Ma talks into a phone or calls Pa a big ol' mush. One of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is easily the one between Pa and Clark, where Pa reassures that Clark is the good person that he is. That line about how parents are there to give their children the tools to act like fools themselves is one of my favorite lines in the movie. It really sounded like something my dad would say. When it comes to the other metahumans, I think they're all great as well. I don't know shit about Guy Gardner's Green Lantern. I thought he was going to be annoying from what I heard of the character, but he wasn't at all. He's a bit of an asshole, but that's the point of the character from what I understand, and Nathan Fillion plays it great. He had his funny moments, and not once did I ever find him annoying. Mr. Terrific was a character I'm only aware of because of the DCAU, and I don't even remember how his character was like in there, but once again, he was fucking great in this movie. Eddie Gathegi is amazing and lends perfectly to all the comedic moments with the character. Top 10 scenes from this movie would probably include the one where Mr. Terrific solos against the entire Raptor base all while 5 Years' Time is playing, as well as the garage door opening scene. But then there's Hawk Girl. I was so excited when she got announced because Hawk Girl quickly became my favorite character of all time in the Justice League show. And that show has fucking Kevin Conroy's Batman, so you know how much praise that is coming from me. I got a Hawk Girl Green Lantern tattoo and got to meet Mariah Canel's Barrera in person. So yeah, I was hyped to have Hawk Girl on the big screen, and it's quite surreal to see, to be honest. Now, I know the Hawk Girl in this movie and the Hawk Girl in Justice League are two different versions of the characters, so there's not much of a comparison to be made, but Isabela Merced was great from what we got to see of her, and I hope we get more of her in the future. Metamorpho is also in here, but they don't call him that for some reason. His legal name is Rex, and the name Luthor gives him is the Element Man, but it's Metamorpho, and I was also intrigued by his inclusion. Again, I only know this character because of the DCAU, and I don't remember much about him, but this movie's version was pretty good. Even though he wasn't in it much, he still worked well with his place in the story. I brought up in my Creature Commandos review that I was worried this movie would be like a lot of other James Gunn projects, where every action scene is soundtracked with some obscure song, but my worries were gone when I got a clip of James saying in an interview that he decided to focus on an actual score, due in part to the John Williams score of the '78 film being what got him into movie scores. James limited himself to 2 needle drops, and I think they were used perfectly, but I'll talk more about them later on. For now, I just want to focus on the score itself, which I think is solid as hell. Of course, the implementation of the original John Williams score is a great nod, but even then, I like how David Fleming still brought a unique Superman theme to the table while giving respect to the ultimate theme. I would not mind if the same trick is used for the DCU's Batman theme using the Danny Elfman melody. Obviously, I love all the use of guitar in this. Those distorted electric guitars on Luthor Core, Justice Gang vs. Kaiju, Secret Harem, Raising the Flag, and Upgrade go so hard. And I even love the acoustic guitars found on Your Choices, Your Actions and Metropolis. Luther Chorus specifically is one of the highlights, sounding reminiscent of something off of a John Wick soundtrack with those guitar riffs, the delayed snares, haunting ambience, and slow tempo. It makes Lex and anything related to him just come off so intimidating. Amazing Lex Luthor theme. Lois and Clark being this nice arpeggio on a clean guitar that also appears on The Real Punk Rock, Take the T-Craft, and Walking on Air is great, and I love it returning in those specific moments. And speaking of motifs returning in other tracks, I like how the Daily Planet theme comes back during The Rift, which also, the Daily Planet theme is just so good. It's got this really fun vibe to it that just fits so perfectly. I love the little synth on Justice Gang vs. Kaiju, and in general, all the action tracks on here, like the aforementioned Justice Gang vs. Kaiju, or Hammer of Barabia, Eyes Up Here, Intruders, Jailbreak, The River Pie, and Speeding Bullet, all slap and bring that immense hype that an action scene needs with its music. The Message is a dramatic scene, and the music just sounds so heartbreaking. At times, it's like the sonical version of your heart dropping into your stomach, and it's just perfect for that scene. On a similar note, while The Message is a perfect score for Clark's world falling around him, I think Luther the Traitor also works as a perfect score for Lex's world falling around him. The two tracks don't sound the same at all, but they kind of fit the same vibe for what's happening to both characters respectively. Oh, and I know I said I would save the needle drops for later, but during the final movie credits, they have a song called the Mighty Crabjoys theme playing, and hearing the oi 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 made me think they were Australian, so I looked up the band to see if I was correct, just to find out that they're entirely fictional to just the DCU. Which, me being a Gorillaz fan, and one of the aspects I loved the most about them was the fictional world and all the lore, I fucking love this. And I think probably my favorite thing about the soundtrack, and I don't know if it's unique to this or if it's because I've watched the movie 3 times in the span of a week, but I can listen to this thing from front to back and basically picture the entire movie in my head, scene by scene, with each track. In general, the whole score gives off hints of John Wick and kind of Arkham to me, to be honest, and I love it for that. Makes me so excited for what we'll get to hear during Brave and the Bold. David Fleming and John Murphy went off on this. They did not miss. I have no notes. I only hope they get to be brought back for future installments in the DCU. And now for a quote-unquote lightning round of little things that I also enjoyed from the movie. The Fortress of Solitude looks really good, both on the inside and out. The title card and end credits paying homage to the original Christopher Reeve movie was a nice touch. On that note, the Will Reeve cameo was cute as well. The funniest exchange in the movie for me was between Eve and Jimmy. Lexi tortured a dog the other day. Jesus Christ! I also like the line, one thing liberals and conservatives can agree on is Lex Luthor sucks, which I seem to be the only one in my theater to find that funny all 3 times I watched this movie. And speaking of dialogue, there's 2 small little lines that I think were really neat and I didn't catch until my second watch. The first is during the scene between Lex and the leader of Baravia, and when the leader is reacting to the taste of the donut, Lex says, I know, I'm thinking about opening one on my side of Jaranpur. I think that's a pretty cool reveal at the whole plan that you kind of miss until all the pieces come together at the end. And the other one was at the end when Four tells Clark that maybe he'll give him a name. Clark says, Four is a name, and Four goes, so is Gary. Then a few moments later when Four is asking if Clark wants to see the video of his parents, he casually calls him Gary in response. On that note of Superman robots, I like how they're made with a combination of mocap and actual practical effects. The Lex Luthor monkey bots is definitely going to become a meme for me, and how I shall be referring to Snyder and Drake stands from here on out. I think it was funny that James said he removed that shot so many people complained about, and then it's at the beginning of the movie. I love the Daily Planet gang and would 1000% take a slice of life TV show about them. That alien in Lex's pocket dimension, Mr. Handsome, is fucking horrifying. I love it. I want to know more about him, where he's from, why he looks like that, and if there's a comic origin for him, which knowing this movie, there probably is. I find it kind of funny how Clark has the line Superman doesn't have time for selfies, and then Eve's selfies are literally what saves the day and puts Lex into jail. Apparently, there's a JSA mural in the Hall of Justice that I never noticed until it was pointed out in an interview clip I saw. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out for that on my next watch. And finally, seeing the way the story goes and the plot of Clark and his parents, I can see how this was originally going to be called Superman Legacy, and how that subtitle played into parts of the story. But I am glad they dropped it and just went for Superman, because to me it's an easier title. I think it's less confusing to the general audience, and also, I'm just happy for Robert Meyer Burnett for getting his wish of a Superman movie just called Superman. And I'm sure I'm gonna think of more while I'm working on this video and even after it's done. Yep, I was correct. I got like 3 notes after watching the movie for a 4th time. The first one being that I love how Superman says stuff like golly and what the hey. The second one being during the scene where LexCorp doesn't know if the engineer has survived the fall or not. And that one guy is trying to go into night vision and he just so awkwardly goes, night vision, please? So fucking realistic. I do that so many times. And the last one is during the scene where Lex is giving the whole spiel to Superman about Ultraman and how he created him and all this stuff, and he's like writing down the code. I swear to God, there is a shot where you can see what looks to be a blue Yeti on the desk. Now, finally, I want to talk about my favorite scene in the entire movie, and it's the final one. After the beginning scene with the footage of his Kryptonian parents soothing him, the whole subplot of him dealing with his actual purpose of being here, and that beautiful moment between him and Pa Kent, having the movie end with his quote-unquote video of his parents, and instead of it being the Kryptonian parents, it's being a bunch of childhood home videos of him with Ma and Pa Kent, soundtracked by Teddy Bear and Iggy Pop's Punk Rocker, is so goddamn adorable and has made me smile so much all 3 times in the theaters. That scene ending off the movie with that specific song made me walk out all 3 times in such a feel-good mood. Every time that song gets stuck in my head, it makes me want to go watch the movie again. It's the best ending to a Superman story like this one, and I love it so much. And I think the inclusion of 5 Years' Time and Punk Rockers and how they're both utilized was one of the various reasons as to why I kept going back to watch this, and why I immediately had to get it physically and can't wait to watch it even more. The way 5 Years' Time plays during a fun action scene on the beach with lyrics about sun and fun, and the overall feel-good vibe of Punk Rockers closing out the movie just makes this film give off the summer blockbuster aura and kind of makes me feel like a kid again. I was never on the MCU train when that was a thing while I was in junior high, not because of some pretentious Martin Scorsese was right type beat. I couldn't give a fuck about the movie quality. It was the fact that a vast majority, probably 99% of Marvel, from just a comic book, universe, and character aspect, has always been uninteresting to me. Outside of Spider-Man, there's just nothing here that sparks a sense of, ooh, interesting in my brain. So I was just so heavily disconnected from the MCU while everyone around me was always hyped for the movies. But since DC has been an interest of mine, starting with my big love for Batman and then understanding Superman and then falling down the DCAU rabbit hole and learning about Jon Stewart's Green Lantern or the coolness of Hawkgirl, Wonder Woman being an absolute badass, the bickering between Hawkgirl and Wonder Woman based on their views of femininity and men, or the relationship between Wonder Woman and Batman and how he refuses to make that work or really even happen, the fun of Wally West Flash, an interesting outlook on the world from Martian Manhunter, the humor behind Booster Gold, and hell, even the dynamic of the Teen Titans and the mature themes that show tackles at times. Deathstroke, Joker, Clayface, Brainiac, Lex Luthor, Raven, Cyborg, Catwoman, Killer Croc, Red Hood, Nightwing, Darkseid, Lobo, Starro, Mr. Freeze, Calendar Man, Harley, Zatanna, Edgerton, Black Mask, Question, Jessica Cruz, Constantine, hell, even the fucking Condiment King. I could go on and on and on. There are just so many DC characters that I inherently find interesting or cool or funny, either because of their costume, their shtick, or because the media I consumed had such a great portrayal of the character. And looking at a future where I get to experience what was the MCU for so many of my friends, but for characters, cities, and worlds that I personally have a lot of interest in, makes me so immensely hyped for the DCU. After my 3rd watch of this movie, I no longer cared what any future project from this universe could be. I will be there to experience it. If fucking Sergeant Rock is in theaters, I will be in my seat for it. It doesn't matter that I have no idea who this character is. I am just on board for whatever trip this universe will be, regardless of anything. I want the DCU to succeed so badly. After the heartbreaking writing that was Creature Commandos, the love and care that was Superman 2025, and especially after hearing that James wants each movie to be its own genre, a Mike Flanagan R-rated horror movie about Clayface, Damian Wayne in a live-action Batman movie, Jason Momoa as Lobo. Yes, I will take all of this. Superman is just such a damn good movie. As a Superman film, a comic book movie, and an introduction to the DCU, it excelled as everything it wanted and needed to be. So yeah, it lived up to the hype, as I already said at the beginning. And it's given me more hype for the rest of the future of these films. I'm genuinely very excited to see Supergirl next year, getting to see more of Millie Alcock's Supergirl, who was very funny and promising in the small cameo she had in this film, and of course, getting fucking Jason Momoa as Lobo on the big screen. I'm so damn excited for that. I love this movie. It's probably going to end up as my favorite of the year. I cannot wait to get my 4K Steelbook and watch it several more times. One with my parents, one with my friend, one after having a tall glass of water just to see how many times I cry at wholesome scenes. Hell, this might become a summer ritual for me. I can't even plan that if I have a bad day at work, I'll just pop in the movie and watch it again. And also, they added more screenings to my local theater, so I'll probably go watch it again. Words cannot explain how excited I am for the DCU and how much I love this movie for everything it does. This is currently the peak of 2025 for me personally, the best thing to come out from this year, and given how every day I'm hearing something more depressing, tiring, rageful, and dystopian coming from the political landscape and the people in the American government, and specifically the nightmare fuel we have for a president right now, not to mention all the hypocritical and also dystopian shit going on in my job right now, I needed this movie. These 2 hours of nothing but hope and good, and escape from the real world and the wholesomeness to make the depression not so bad. Hell, I'm not gonna lie, watching the way Superman controls his anger in this movie and continues to push forward as a sign of hope and a statement of good has made me genuinely give my hardest attempts to do the same. I watched this movie twice during a 4-day break and went back to work trying to stay positive and not let myself sink into becoming the cynical bastard I have been for months. Even walking out onto the floor after clocking on, saying to myself, be like Superman. And it's fucking hard. But hey, kindness is punk rock, and I'm all for being punk. Go watch Superman, regardless if you have or haven't seen it. It's a fucking great movie.
And of course, everyone has their own opinion, but my opinion is the best opinion. I'm sure you figured that out already.
Could I have a subscriber, please?